Hello again, gamers. Welcome back for another episode of Grokking Battletech. I'm the board game captain, and today I'm going to be telling you how to grok the Stinger. Now, I want to give a big thank you to one of my regular viewers, Sam H, for requesting that I cover the Stinger in an episode of Grokking Battletech. So, Sam H, this episode is for you. So, before I get too into this, I do want to say I've got a ton of links in the description down below that you can check out at your leisure. There's a link to BoardGameCaptain.com, which is a great hub for all things Board Game Captain. There's also a link to my Teespring store. You can get yourself some cool Board Game Captain merch, t-shirts, mugs, etc. And there's a link to my Patreon. If you're in a position to and would like to support the channel, head over to my Patreon, link in the description down below. All right, so the Stinger. The Stinger is one of the original mechs going all the way back to when the game was called Battle Droids. This is one of the mechs that is actually based on an anime mech that predates Battletech and Battle Droids. This is a tiny little 20-ton, fairly fast and maneuverable mech with very light armament, kind of a harasser mech, if you will. So I'm going to go over a bunch of the different versions of the Stinger. I'm going to tell you which is my favorite, also make a custom version of the Stinger and a lance that uses the Stinger, and give you a recommended mech warrior to pilot the Stinger. So to start with, let's go over a bunch of the versions of the Stinger. Now, I want to preface this a little bit by saying I don't really love any of the canon versions of the Stinger. Of the old school mechs, this is actually one of my least favorite. There are a lot of issues and flaws with the Stinger in most of its forms. And we're going to go over why all that is. But I am going to talk about, there are some of them I do kind of like for certain reasons. All right, so to start with, we're going to start with the STG-3G. This is a Star League era version of the Stinger. Comes in at a bargain basement 495 battle value, so less than 500 battle value is really nice. It's got a 696 movement, which is generally the standard for Stingers. There are some that are a little different. Now, this is a fairly maneuverable amount of speed, 6 walking, 9 running, 6 jumping, but it's not incredibly impressive compared to some of the other light mechs that can go much faster than it. The 711-7 movement is generally significantly better and gives it +1 extra difficulty to hit a faster mech like that, like a Spider, for instance, which gets 711-7, is 1 more difficulty to hit in every full movement mode than the Stinger is. So that is a bit of an issue, especially since the Stinger doesn't have a lot of armor if it gets hit as well. So it's got 6 armor on the arms, 7 on each side torso, 8 on the center torso, 6 on the head, 7 on each leg, and 4 and 3 on the rear torso sections, respectively. That means you heard that right. The best armor anywhere on this mech is 8. This is not very well armored, especially considering that it cannot move that fast, and its only armament is a pair of medium lasers. So the thing is, with this mech, you got to get in fairly close to use those medium lasers. That's a little tough. You're going to want to really get behind enemies because you don't want to take the full brunt of an enemy's fire even once. At only moving 696, you're not that difficult to connect with, especially if someone's paid to upgrade their gunnery skill or take in a special mech warrior in the particular mech that's shooting at you. You're going to want to stay behind them. You're going to want to jump from forest to forest, even into heavy forests if you can, and harass people with this mech. Now, this is not the worst harasser mech. This is a mech I could see myself using, especially for the bargain basement price of only 497 battle value. Also, it only has 10 basic heat sinks, but that's fine for the 2 medium lasers and jumping. If it fully jumps and uses both medium lasers, it's only going to overheat a couple of points. That's really not bad. It's just the biggest problem with this mech is the fact that you have to get close to use it, and it's not fast enough to really make it that hard to connect with it. So that, yeah, it's very possible for an enemy to hit the target. If we're talking about a mech that's only upgraded its gunnery skill from a 4 to a 3, maybe for the small cost that it costs you to do that, or because they have a slightly upgraded mech warrior. So you got 3, and then your enemy, let's say you run that 9 hexes, that's a +3, that's up to a 6 to hit them. And now you're at close range because you have to get in really close to use it. If you walk, that's only a 7. It's still actually very likely to hit the target, which is why you're going to want to use this mech to jump in forests, especially heavy forests, or behind, cover behind a level 1 hill if you can, to make it a little harder to hit it. But even then, beyond the Starleague and Succession War eras, this is not a super usable mech. In the Succession War eras, not bad. Beyond that, probably not going to use it even with the discount. Now, the next version of the Stinger I'm going to talk about is the STG-3R. Again, this is got the 696 movement that's pretty standard for Stingers. Again, it's got the 10 single heat sinks, which is not a problem for these kind of very light, not a lot of heat being caused by these mechs. Its armor is even worse, though. So we have only 4 armor on the head, 6 on the side torso, 6 on the center torso, 4 on the arms, 5 on the legs, 4 and 2, respectively, on the rear torso sections. Now, this one comes with a medium laser and a pair of machine guns. The only thing that this mech is good for is when fighting with combined arms, is hunting down infantry. Now, the pair of machine guns in a fairly maneuverable mech like this is good for hunting down infantry, but again, not really good for anything else. But it does have an even more bargain basement battle value of 359 battle value. That's incredibly affordable for this mech, but again, very niche in what I would use this version, the 3R Stinger, for. Now we're going to jump into some future time period versions of the Stinger. The first one I want to talk about is a Jihad era version of the Stinger. It's actually one I kind of like. This is the Stinger STG-3P. P as in Papa. Now, this thing is still the 696 movement, 20-ton mech, 10 single heat sinks. That's pretty standard for these. The armor's not terrible. We have 8 on the center torso, 7 on the side torsos, 6 on the arms, 7 on the legs, 4 and 3 on the rear torso sections, respectively, 6 on the head. Not terrible for a Stinger, still not great. But this is why I like this one as a good harasser mech. It comes equipped with a single light PPC. Now, light PPCs do 5 damage up to a maximum of 18 hexes away. It no longer needs to get point blank with its enemy. Suddenly, you can get those modifiers much higher. Again, let's say we're fighting against and harassing an enemy mech that has a gunnery skill of 3. So we got 3. The Stinger moves fast enough to give you a +3 difficulty by running its full 9. That makes the 3 go up to a 6. But now you're at medium range, then it's an 8. Or maybe you're at long range, then it's a 10. Suddenly it's much harder to hit this Stinger. And you know what? You can be shooting at, with those really hard to hit numbers at your enemy while you're running and flanking and shooting and occasionally connecting with the target. And that's fine. Your point is just to harass. You're not going to do a lot of damage with one light PPC that only does 5 damage at up to 18 hexes away. The point is to annoy and harass someone and possibly make them try to turn and deal with this expendable resource. And as a Jihad era mech, 489 battle value is actually, again, still a bargain basement mech. Now, the next version of the Stinger I want to talk about is an advanced tech version. This is also one I actually like. This is the SGG-5G. G as in golf. Now, this thing has upped its movement to 711-6. Now, the 711, the 6 may not be improved at all, but that 711 at both walking and running, you now are +1 extra difficulty to hit you than you had over all of the previous versions of the Stinger. This is a huge upgrade. I know it seems like a small thing, but it is a huge upgrade over a lot of the other versions of the Stinger. This version of the Stinger has 10 double heat sinks to keep it cool. Wasn't, hugely necessary, but it's fine. It helps. Its armor has the full 9 on the head, which is nice. We've got 8 on the center torso, 7 on the side torsos, 6 on the arms, 8 on the legs, 4 and 3 on the rear torso sections, respectively. The big upgrade there is the larger amount on the head, making it a little harder to head cap this versus some of the earlier versions of the Stinger, in addition to the making it harder to hit this Stinger. Now, this Stinger has a light PPC with a PPC capacitor. So you can charge up that PPC capacitor one turn, and the next turn fire at that up to 18 hexes away, and be able to hit to do 10 damage rather than 5. Now, granted, if you're going to want to do the 10 damage, you're only going to be able to fire once every other turn, but this is a much better harasser mech. Granted, you do pay a little more in the battle value. It ups to about 614 battle value, but this is one of the few versions of the Stinger that I really do feel like actually is worth its battle value, because that 10 damage is enough to make your opponent worry. Granted, it's only going to be able to do it once every other turn, or it could fire its first shot and do 10, and then just every turn do 5 and not use the PPC capacitor if it wants to. The next version of the Stinger I'm going to talk about is the 5M. 5 is in Mike. STG 5M. Now, this is a clan invasion version of the Stinger, moving a little backwards in time. It's got the 696 movement that is pretty standard. It's got the 10 single heat sinks that most of the versions have. We have only 6 armor on the head again. We have 8 on the center torso, 8 on the side torsos, 4 on the arms, 5 on the legs, and 4 and 2 armor on the rear torsos, respectively. So again, not great in the armor category. This one comes with a medium laser, a flamer, and an anti-missile system. Now again, this is a bargain basement 432 battle value. And again, this is one that really is only good for hunting down, in my opinion, infantry and smaller vehicles. You definitely want to keep this far away from mainline battle mechs, because even though it's cheap, it's not going to earn its payback. Its battle value back fighting against other battle mechs. Next, we're going to talk about a Civil War era version of the Stinger, and one I actually like quite a bit because of how it thoroughly leans into the disposable nature of mechs like the Stinger with their tissue paper for armor. This is the Stinger 5R, R as in Romeo. Now, this one has a 696 movement as per normal, the 10 single heat sinks per normal. We've got 6 armor on the center torso and side torso, 7 armor on the head, 5 on the arms, 6 on the legs, and 2 on every rear torso section. So it's even inferior in armor to a lot of other versions. But this one has a really nice one-hit punch, because it has twin rocket launcher 15s, which can hit it up to 15 spaces away and hit kind of like LRM 15s, but with one volley each only, and an ER medium laser. So you get one good shot of unloading with the rocket launcher 15s, and then you have the ER medium laser to harass with. But if you die after that, it's already spent most of its payload on that one big punch. So if you can spend most of that payload on one big punch on a mech that has already been hit with like some Gauss rifle or autocannon 20 shots and has some holes, and you can find the holes and get a crit, you might actually have this mech pay for itself, again, because it has a pretty bargain basement cost of only 492 battle value. So this is one that I actually quite like. But keep in mind, this is a glass cannon and a completely disposable mech. Now, the next version I want to talk about is the STG-5T. T is in Tango. This is a decent version of the Stinger. We've got the 696 movement. This is a Jihad era version. It has 10 single heat sinks. Again, tissue paper for armor, 7 on the head. We have 6 on every front torso section, 5 on the arms, 6 on the legs, 2 on every rear torso section. But this comes with 2 multi-missile launcher 3s. Now, that's not going to do a lot of damage, but you can harass with them at distance while moving in, and then when you get in close, you can do better damage coming in close to your enemy's rear and firing them with SRM missiles. Now, the thing about this mech is that even if you do this, even if you keep your distance, move fast, hit him with some LRMs, get in close only when you get to the rear, fire with those SRMs, a slower, better armed light mech that turns around and tries to deal with you is probably going to tear you apart in 1 to 2 turns. This thing has almost no armor on it. Again, the best armor anywhere on this mech is 7, and that's on the head. The center torso only has 6, and then of course only 6 internal structure. So while I do kind of like this version, the best thing about it, in my opinion, is its bargain basement 341 battle value. You can fit this one in almost any lance. It's super cheap, and that is definitely my favorite thing about it. So the next version of the Stinger I want to talk about is a Civil War version. This is the STG-6L. L is in Lima. Now, this is a much faster version of the Stinger. We were able to get a larger engine by removing all the jump jets. So this one acts kind of a bit more like a Locust than it does a Stinger. You've got 8-12 movement, but this is much better for keeping those target modifiers high. We also have a bit better armor with 9 on the center torso, 8 on the side torsos, 9 on the head, 6 on the arms, 8 on the legs, 3 and 2 in the rear torso sections respectively. We've got 10 double heat sinks to stay cool while running and firing. It's got a pair of medium lasers and a Guardian ECM suite. This is actually not a bad version of the Stinger with its higher movement. It's slightly better armor. It's not so bad to try to get in close if you can get around the flank with those medium lasers. And with the Guardian ECM suite, you can really use this mech to disrupt those C3 networks or Artemis 4 systems or other things that Guardian ECM suites are really good at disrupting. Unfortunately, it is a bit more expensive at 680 battle value. However, if you run into an enemy that's really relying on electronic equipment like the C3 networks, suddenly this thing will pay for itself without ever having to connect with those medium lasers. Just the ability of disrupting the C3 network is enough to make the 6L actually totally pay for itself. Next, we're going to discuss the STG-6S, which is a Jihad era version. Now, this version of the Stinger comes with a mask, so it has 7-11, 7 movement, but with the mask, it can run up to 14. This is a huge upgrade in getting those target modifiers up high, but the equipment only has an ER medium laser and 2 light machine guns. It's got 10 single heat sinks, which is fine. The armor's not terrible with 8 on all front torso sections, 7 on the head, 5 on the arms, 6 on the legs, and 2 on every rear torso section respectively. Comes in at a nice cheap 478 battle value, but this is another mech that again is really only good for hunting down very light vehicles and infantry, and that's really it. Those light machine guns are not good for hitting anything other than infantry, so I'm actually not a huge fan of that version. The next Stinger is the STG-7S. Now this one's got a 6-9-8 movement because we have improved jump jets, which of course you get in the Jihad era, where you can actually jump further than you can walk. I really like this version because it ups the maneuverability of the mech quite a bit. It has a single ER medium laser, which helps to harass at a fairly decent range. It comes in at only 382 battle value. It's got 10 single heat sinks, 7 armor on the center torso, 6 on the side torsos, 4 on the arms, 3 on the legs, 9 on the head, at least we're trying to protect the pilot there, and 2 and 1 on the rear torso sections respectively. But at that only 382 battle value, this is one that its harassing can actually make this mech pay for itself, and jumping of 8 is nothing to sneeze at. Okay, so for my custom version of the Stinger, I have a version of the Stinger 7S, the STG-7S KIWF, redesigned by my own personal mech design firm, KIWF Industries, which was named after the last initials of its 4 founding members, but was affectionately nicknamed Kill It With Fire by its fans. Now, KIWF's version is the 7S with that lovely 8 jumping capability to really get those target modifiers up, but we strip off the one weapon, the ER medium laser. Let's be honest, that wasn't going to do a lot of damage to begin with, and we replace it with a tag. So here we get an incredibly affordable Jihad era version of the Stinger at 257 battle value. This is the cheapest mech I have ever designed. Unbelievably affordable. It is going to be underestimated because it has no weapons on it. It's only offensive capabilities, or either punching and kicking. It can still sneak up behind someone and try to punch them, get 2 chances with 1 and 6 each to hit them in the head and do a damage to the pilot, or it can kick them and cause a piloting skill roll. All of that is good, but its main purpose is not to do that. Its main purpose is to be underestimated, to flank around the side, and to hit someone with the tag and light them up for semi-guided missiles. If playing advanced rules, of course, you could also light them up for artillery as well and use this mech as an artillery spotter. And at 257 battle value, this mech is a steal. Now, what mech warrior would I recommend pilot this mech? Because I got to tell you, this is my favorite version of the Stinger. I am not a huge version of any of the canon versions of the Stinger, so I will be using this version for my Lance. I recommend using Akira Uchiyama. in this mech. Now, generally speaking, I don't usually recommend putting a mech warrior in a 257 battle value mech, but for this lance, this mech warrior is actually going to make a lot of sense being in the Stinger. So this is a 2-cost mech warrior, so this is going to be a mech warrior you're going to choose when you and your opponent agree to use a 2-cost mech warrior. Now, they have a 4 gunnery, 5 piloting skills, so they do not increase the skills of the mech warrior at all. So this is a bit of a denial choice, so your opponent won't get to increase the stats of one of their bigger mech warriors at all. And they come with a perfect ability for this mech, which is Jumping Jack, because you're never going to do any movement other than jump that full 8 hexes every turn. And Jumping Jack reduces the attack modifier from +3 down to a +1 when jumping, which means that jumping has the same target modifier as walking. So you're going to jump into forest, jump into heavy forest, and hit people with the tag to light them up. Now, a little bit about the lance I'm putting this mech warrior in. This is a 6,000 battle value Jihad era lance. And this lance generally is meant to be the second lance when you are playing at 12,000 battle value. You're playing 2 lances, where the other lance will be an up close and personal in your face lance with big guns like LB-20X autocannons, autocannon 20s, heavy Gauss rifles and Gauss rifles to really punch holes in your enemy. And then this lance has the 1 stinger to come up and be underestimated and not shot at, while it lights people up to target for all the LRM fire coming in from range. So as you can guess, I'm sure the rest of the mechs in this lance are filled with LRMs that you're going to swap out their ammo with semi-guided missiles. Now, if you don't recall, semi-guided missiles are great because they remove a lot of the target modifiers when they've been when the target has been lit up with tag. So you're going to come in jumping with the Stinger, lights the enemy up with tag. Once they're lit up, you're going to unload with all of that indirect fire and from the LRMs of the other mechs, and it's going to just obliterate certain enemies in single turns. So, of course, the first mech in the lance is the Stinger SCG-7S KIWF. The second mech in the lance is the mech with the most LRMs. This is the Longbow LGB-12R. Now, the LGB-12R is a 353 movement where we're planning on having this force fighting in an area with lots of hills and forests. Because, as I said before, the Stinger is supposed to be jumping around from forest to forest. This mech also can reposition itself very well with its 3 jumping movement. Now, it has 4 LRM-15s and 2 ER medium lasers. Those semi-guided missiles from this alone, when lit up with the tag, will thoroughly do a lot of damage to whatever is on the other side. The next mech in the lance is the Shogun SHG-2E. Now, this is another assault mech, a second 85-ton mech. We were able to fit 2 assault mechs in this lance because of how unbelievably affordable my custom version of the Stinger is. And this mech has 2 LRM-15s, 2 SRM-6s, and a PPC. Now, it also has a 353 movement, so it can, again, reposition easily. And with those short-range weapons and the PPC, if an enemy tries to come in and seek to fight you, you can use this mech to intercept a little bit and deal with a medium or lighter mech trying to come in and take out your big mechs. The Shogun, actually, with those 2 LRM-15s, is going to also pretty well back up your longbow in just hitting with all of those homing semi-guided missiles. Finally, we have the final mech in the lance, which is still a heavy mech. It is the 70-ton Archer ARC-7L. Again, 353 movement for that easy to reposition and jump into a forest. And we have twin LRM-20s and a Guardian ECM suite for if something tries to get past your Stinger and run in close. That maybe is part of a C3 network. This can help break that up, or is trying to spot maybe for some indirect Artemis 4 missile fire, again, to intercept that. The twin LRM-20s, of course, are going to be loaded up with nothing but semi-guided missiles, again, to back up the 6 LRM-15s from the other 2 mechs. And then we have a pair of ER medium lasers, again, if something tries to get in close, a little bit of close range fire, to try to deal with those situations. But hopefully, if you're playing this lance along with another, charging blitzkrieg kind of lance that gets in close, hopefully none of your enemy mechs should get past them. but of course, no plan survives first contact with the enemy. Now, this lance is built as a 6,000 battle value fire lance, and as a fire lance, the requirements are that at least 75% of the units must be either missile boats or snipers. Now, all 3 mechs in this lance, other than the Stinger, are missile boats. And then the ability you get for the fire lance is that at the beginning of each turn, up to 2 units in the lance can receive the sniper ability, which of course reduces the difficulty from range to hit the target in half. So you could have the Stinger still firing at medium range with the tag and only get a +1 difficulty, or if the Stinger comes in close around the enemies, you can reduce the range difficulty modifier for some of these missiles coming in at their targets. There you have it. That is my episode for the Stinger. I hope you enjoyed it. If you enjoyed this episode of Grokking Battletech and you'd like to see me do more like it, be sure to give it a like, share it on all forms of social media, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the Board Game Captain. That's Captain spelled with a K on YouTube. And until next time, game on.